Um, my next question has to do with both your third transition and also how the universe threw you into writing your book, From Smart to Wise. Take us there a little bit.
Yeah. Again, when I was doing this research, because we were spending a lot of time, like spending 3 weeks in the brain surgeons operating theaters or scientists or some of them, there were two people, one Ruben Feuerstein, whom a lady called Dee Dickinson from Seattle introduced. I think, Nancy, you know Dee. Uh, and she asked me to go to a conference in India. She said she was also going to come. She was planning to till her son got diagnosed with sickness, some illness. And I ended up in India not knowing any of the people. And just before that, I was in what you call Israel, very briefly to meet with Ruben Feuerstein. And he talked about mediated learning experience. And then when I asked him what is mediated learning experience, at that time we were both in New York. And then he said, he looked to his wife and said, Bertha, do we have 4 hours free? She said, yeah, we are open. We are supposed to spend the whole day with Prasad. So next thing we know, we were taking taxi and got into a train, and we ended up in Washington, D.C., going to Smithsonian, where he took me to Smithsonian Art Gallery, and he talks to me about, Van Gogh's painting of the boats and the ocean. And he just looks at the picture and says, what do you see there? I say, yeah, ocean, boats, people. He said, no, go nearby. Go very close to that. What do you see? Then I realized they were not really faces. They were mostly ovals and circles with not enough detail. But when I stood far enough from the painting, I could see, I could project people and boats and everything else. So he asked me to change my position where I'm standing and look at the image from different angles. And I could see that there was something really spectacular about how I look at. Then he took me to, from there to Monet, or he took me to several other painters. And about 1 hour later, as he was showing me and I was explaining what I am seeing, completely baffled that I never saw some of what he was demonstrating till he asked me some questions or asked me to look at some position. I found the curator of the art museum running up to Ruben, saying, hey, you didn't tell me you are coming. I realized later that he was on the board. Ruben Feuerstein was on the board of National Gallery of Art. And then he said, hey, I got another guy for your art appreciation class. Ask away your questions. And next thing I know, this curator is asking me about art, and I didn't have any idea before that. And he was asking questions about, what is the difference between this kind of art and that kind of art, and cubism and something else. I just pulled out answers from nowhere, having no formal art education. And then Ruben turns to me and said, where did those answers come from? Have you ever been in Smithsonian? I said, yeah. But did you see what you saw? I said, no. I saw the pictures, but the interpretation of that pictures was invisible to me. He said, that is called mediated learning. He said, there are objects, there are you, but unless you and the object get connected through a mediator or a coach or a teacher or a guru or a mentor who helps you to see the subtle dimensions of what is present, whatever object is offering is invisible to you. He said that is called mediated learning. And he said, that is what I do with the people with the Down syndrome or some of them. And then when I was in Israel, he gives me a Sanskrit small quote and he says, can you read it? I said, yeah, I did. And then he said, do you know what this means? I said, yeah, I studied Sanskrit for a long time and I explained it to him. He said, now do you see the connection between my work and what you just read? I said, no, Ruben, I don't. He said, well, you are smart, but not intelligent. You have intellect, but you know Sanskrit, and you know Yoga Sutras, and you know my work, but you don't seem to connect the dots. Again, I need to mediate it. And he said to me about the whole principle of, what you call, there is something you want to learn, and you are a learner, and in between there needs to be a coach or a facilitator or a person, teacher, who needs to help you make a deeper connection. He said that is the essence of your Indian spirituality. That is what yoga is all about. And he said, I think you are wasting your time with Apple. I wonder whether you should go back to your spiritual roots, because they talk a lot more about nature of learning and nature of knowledge rather than you will ever learn in the brain research or talking to artificial intelligence people. I think you need to go back. And that was the one that led me to India and reconnect with, some of the Indian spiritual tradition. So I fell right into spirituality. And for next, I quit Apple. I said I will create a focus on Institute for Learning and Knowledge Architecture. By the way, this is 1990 when people are still talking about data architecture. And so I went directly looking at integrating the spirituality, business with the technology, because I felt we need to design tools that augment intelligence, not just learning that leads to information, but learning that leads to wisdom. And after that, working with 25 years with various companies, because when I quit Apple, I thought companies will ask me to do something on user interface or technology design, but they wanted to learn what I learned from these 200 people on how do they collaborate, how do they think, how do they learn. So again, I fell into developing leadership programs and innovation programs 25 years ago. So I kind of worked through now over 100 companies and trying to learn coaching by coaching people, and developing people by learning how to develop myself. So I'm a guy who has fallen into these three circles by a lot of grace and gratitude. I'm still fumbling along my path, figuring out how I can really connect all the things. But then I found, I'm already almost 60 and it is almost retirement age, but I haven't made too much progress yet.
Well, I think the amount of progress, others might disagree with you.